Hello, Kate. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm
So
good,
nice
thank
to
you.
have you back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so great to have you back on the podcast. People who've listened to most of the episodes will already recognise you. But for those that have not heard your voice before, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Kate. I am 21 months sober. I just hit, which still
Amazing.
surprises me because I struggled to do a day. If I had a day off booze, I would just be thinking I'm only doing this to prove to myself I can do it. I have been drinking since I was a teenager and I hit it hard. I drank pretty much every day of my 20s and my 30s. And it just got to a point where alcohol defined who I was to me and to other people. And I just was always thinking about it or drinking or recovering from it. And I didn't like what I looked like. I didn't know who I was anymore. I was disappointed in myself. I didn't like myself. I was disgusted in myself. And I just thought enough is enough. And I basically filmed myself really drunk in December a few years ago and was just sobbing and saying, "This isn't me. Stop poisoning yourself. Stop doing this to yourself." And it worked because the next day I think I was just so fed up. I thought, if I don't do this now, this is the end. I'm never going to get out of this trap. It's been 20, 30 years of drinking. Um, when is it going to stop? You've got to do this, Kate. You've just got to do it and see who you are. And so I did. And with the help of the kind of sober community, I didn't do AA. I joined something called Soberistas and joined a 100-day challenge to get me going, which really helped in those initial months. And then I found the sober community on Instagram, and that has kind of given me a community of people who have kind of cheered me on and who I've helped and who have helped me back. And it's just been a lovely, fluid relationship that sort of kept me going. And I'm just like, I'm here at 21 months and I genuinely cannot believe this is me. Neither can any of my friends or family, but it is, and I've never been happier.
That's amazing. And since then, of course, you have, well, during this experience, you've built up pretty huge Instagram following, and your tag is at walking the straight line. I forgot that right. Obviously, I follow you, but I'm just checking.
I
Not
don't
having.
know about huge, but
Oh.
it's it's more than I thought, because I use Instagram as a kind of diary.
Mm.
I'll post 3 times in one morning and then I won't post. Today I'll post once, but I am regularly using it. So, but I didn't know what to expect. I didn't use Instagram. I wasn't on social media at all. But it's great, isn't it? And it's a really friendly place because I kind of dabbled in Facebook last week and it was horrible. The responses I got were negative and unkind, and I just thought, whoa, and I backed straight off and left.
Mm.
But Instagram is very different to TikTok and Facebook, I think, because you choose who you follow, you don't get shown stuff that you
Mm.
don't want to see, and people are all there for the same reason. And apart from a few kind of weird ones, it's just been a really nice, supportive thing for me, and I've absolutely loved it. So while I've still got things to say, I'll carry on posting. But yeah.
And of course, you've now got your really successful podcast that you do with Steph, who was on last week's episode, The Sober Effect. So anyone listening who's not listened to the Sober Effect podcast, get on over and have a listen because it's awesome. So this week, Kate and I thought we would talk about the notion of boredom, because we were chatting the other day and we agreed that one of the big drivers behind why we used to drink was simply that we were bored. So, Kate, talk to us. How did boredom fit in with your drinking?
I mean, I think boredom, I used to use boredom as a reason when
Mm.
I was explaining why I drank all the time. And I think part of that was drinking made me very lazy because all I wanted to do was sit at home on my sofa and watch telly and drink. And that was boring in itself. And then I would say, well, I'm bored, so I'm drinking. But it's kind of an excuse to drink. But it really did make me boring. But I think it was also to do with escape. I think for me, and I don't know about your experience, but for me, especially having kids living in suburbia, I like adventure, I like excitement. And there comes a time of your life where you've got to get a job, you've got to get up in the morning, you've got to do that job, most of us 5 days a week. You don't have the money to go off gallivanting around every weekend. You don't have the funds or the means, and life becomes much more predictable, whether you've got kids or not. But when you're in those kind of late 30s, early 40s, you've really got to sort of work and to pay bills. And that can be frustrating if you're someone who likes to just put a backpack on and go to the airport and buy a ticket to anywhere, which is the kind of person I am. And I think because I just thought I feel a bit claustrophobic in this life. This isn't me. I don't want to just be, a person living in suburbia. And I drank to give myself that kind of thrill of my brains going somewhere else. And although it was dramatic in a really bad way, in a fake way, in a drug-induced way, let's be clear about that, because there was no real excitement. There was no learning or meeting new people or seeing new things. I was sitting in my living room drinking on my own mostly, or with my husband. But my mind was fluctuating and my moods so much that almost the process of dealing with all that crap was filling the space. Does that make sense?
Totally. And that really resonates with me, this being adventurous. And I've definitely discovered since I've stopped drinking that I am a really adventurous person, and that I like seeking adventure. And it's ironic, isn't it, that we used to seek adventure in alcohol, but alcohol made us so unadventurous and so boring. It made me hole up in my house on my own and have a wine on my own. Like, that's the least adventurous thing in the world, right? And when we stop drinking it, we actually lean into doing really adventurous things. Yeah, completely.
We do, yeah. And I think, boredom is an interesting one, because I don't know if you want to talk about boredom and sobriety, because again, that's a really big topic, and it's something that I have experienced.
Yeah.
And I was brought up saying, never say you're bored. That's the sign of a boring person. Go and do something. And so the word bored I wasn't allowed to use at home as a kid, because my mum would get cross at me and say, don't be so pathetic, go and do something. So but I think when you stop drinking, you get all this time, don't you? You don't realize how much time you were wasting preparing drinks, drinking drinks, recovering from drinks. And once you eliminate that, that song that's about 8 hours of work, 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of play. And it's true, when you break your day up, you do have quite a lot of time, even after work and sleep, for yourself. And I was using that, preparing for and drinking. And suddenly I've got mornings, which I never had. I'd stay in bed as late as I possibly could every day of the week. And now I'm up a few hours before everyone else sometimes. Like I was up at 5:30 this morning. I did some work and I did a reel for Instagram. You suddenly get all this time, but like me, I didn't have any hobbies, because drinking was my hobby. And that sounds so pathetic, but it is true. And that's what I did in my spare time. Yes, I was sociable. I had friends. I went out and we did stuff, but I only did stuff that involved drinking in the evenings. I would never have done something if I couldn't have a drink while I was doing it. That would have really annoyed me. So when you've got this time, you suddenly sit there and you think, well, what am I interested in? Who am I? Because you have to fill it. Otherwise you start craving a drink. Did you find that as well? Did you sit there and go, what is all this time? What am I going to do?
And this is what I always say to clients. This is the universal law of vacuum that is coming into action. Because when we first stopped drinking, there's this massive gaping hole left where all the drinking was before, because it takes up so much space, all of this drinking. Whether it's the aftermath, the preparation for doing it, the trying not to do it. And when you take it out, it's like, whoa, what do I do with all this time? And that does send some people back to drinking, right? Because they freak out. They're like, oh my God, what do I do now? And I just describe it as like sitting in your lounge and watching the tumbleweed like blow past you, and having the courage to play chicken with the universe and go, this is the most magnetic space I've ever created for myself. There's basically a magnet in the middle of my living room now. Just sit here, breathe, trust. This is going to fill up with so much stuff. Get excited. Don't fear it, because you've just unblocked yourself and manifestations are coming through. And it does happen, right? So, I mean, on a micro level, I remember it was like day 3 or 4 of me not drinking, and I sat in my flat in Dubai and I was like, I'm really bored. And then I had a download from must have been from my higher self, that said, the most important thing for you to do right now, Anneka, is to be bored. And I was like, oh, okay. I just sat there and I was like, I'm bored. And I haven't felt like
this
this
is boring, being bored.
Well, let's just lean into being bored. And then within about half an hour, I'd like found something really fun to do, like really creative, just like you do when you're a child. You just find something to do. And this happens on a micro and a macro level, right, across your life. And then before you know it, then you've just got so many lovely things to do that I can't imagine how I would find time to drink now if I started drinking again. I've got too many things I do. And I mean, I did have a phase. When was it? It was a couple of months ago. Maybe it was a month ago. And I suddenly noticed I'm getting a bit bored in the evenings again. What's that about? Oh, I'm noticing that I want to eat more chocolate because I'm bored. Okay, right, I need to do something about this. I'm not having this. And I just kind of redesigned my evening schedule. And now I really love my evenings again. So it's very easily overcome. Yeah.
I think you're right. And it forces you to fill your time. Excuse me. But what's life for other than to fill time, to learn what you're interested in? It's not about getting through the day as quickly as possible and then getting through the next day. That is life. You need to build on it. These are the best parts of your life, where you have time that you can fill with things that genuinely interest you. And I think I've always kind of seen my sort of sobriety as I was carrying all this shame and guilt and self-loathing and calamity and mess around with me like a big bag of bricks. And when I decided to stop drinking, I put that bag down and I started to take parts of that bag out, and I started to build myself a kind of new home with those bits and bobs of bricks that I wanted to keep. And that takes time. And every brick is a new thing that I'm learning. And you know, every single brick is something that I'm interested in that. And I never would have realized that if I hadn't done this. But it takes time. And as you said, sitting with yourself is really important, because we haven't done that for so long. If you've been a regular drinker, you don't do things for yourself. If you're anything like me, you're constantly feeling like you're in the wrong, and you're trying to make up for it by being nice to everyone because you feel guilty about what a mess you are. And you're running around trying not to look hungover, and it feels very selfish to do something just for yourself. But once you get rid of the drink and you think, well, I'm not spending money on it, I'm not doing anything that's bad, you start to look after yourself, and you start to get a bit more kind of like, well, it's okay for me to want to do something just for me. If I want to do an evening art course, or if I want to start in a running group, or starting to play netball, or like you do, CrossFit, all these different things, that's okay. I can carve out a bit of the day just for me. And when you realize you're allowed to do that, and no one turns around and sort of says, well, you've wasted all morning in bed, you really need to do X, Y, and Z, you start to think, this is actually allowed. This is what life's meant to be like. We're meant to meet friends, go and do things we like. It doesn't matter what that is. And it's really bloody exciting. I have been an adult for however many years, and I've never ever felt that I'm able to just go off and do something. It feels really extravagant. But I have done 3 evening art courses now at the local college. And it's just been amazing to go off with my little backpack and my student ID as a 40 odd person, and go into the school and start doing pottery or life drawing. And it really does bring another dimension into your life, and it's learning about yourself, and you meet new people, and you start. Now when people say, have you got hobbies, I can say yes. I don't just have to say drinking's my hobby, and dying inside as I say it.
Totally. And for me, there's something really messed up, and I know that the culture in the UK is changing, right? Like really is changing. Like Gen Z don't drink like we did when we were younger, but when I was at uni, that's everyone's hobby was going out and getting drunk, and it was all consuming. In fact, I remember sacking off my hobbies for it. So I liked rowing at school, and I remember going to the university briefing in Freshers Week for the rowing club and just thinking, oh God, I can't commit to this. Like, it's going to get in the way of my drinking. Like, I'm too busy going out. And that was just so normalized to
Such a shame.
I know. Like, I had the opportunity to row as a part of a university team, and I didn't take it. Like,
you should start rowing now.
Well, I would, but also there's only one of me, and I have 2 jobs, and I go to
You've now got not enough time. Yeah.
And I meditate every day, and etc. etc. So
Yeah.
I believe in doing a few things very well rather than too many things badly.
Yeah.
Maybe one day I'll do rowing.
But I think, I mean, the truth is that yes, you can have hobbies, but money is a restraint. And lots of people I hear talking about all the wonderful things they do, I'm like, that must cost a fortune. I don't have that money to spend. So let's be realistic as well. You know, some people are left, some of them at home, single parents trying to give up booze. They can't just go off to do an art course. And my biggest kind of thing that I did when I did get triggered was to just put my trainers on and go out for a walk for an hour, because my kids are older and I can leave them. But there are people who can't do that. And I realize that. And I never want to kind of make it sound like I'm sort of throwing money left, right, and center. And sure, if you've got all that money, you can do whatever you want. You can go to Paris one weekend and Amsterdam the next. But I think boredom and filling time is really important in early sobriety, especially because you can overthink things to the point where it becomes quite destructive. And I think, you know, that's why a lot of people who take a month off, they're kind of like, well, I don't see that much difference. I feel healthier. But it's like, it's a long process. I remember month 4 thinking, God, I'm really just starting to feel things, because your body has been in a certain way for so long. But you do need to do things in the evening, but that can be anything, can't it? I mean, having a long bath, if you can do that, or doing a free online writing course, or joining a community where there's a book club or something like that. And I just think filling time and having something to look forward to when it gets to that time of night when you would usually have a drink and settle down, I think it is important to change the environment, change what you do something with your hands, whatever that is, so that you're distracted in a way. Because I did find that difficult in the early days, and I'd be sitting there almost biting my hand going, please, someone give me something to do. I'm just thinking about alcohol all the time.
I think it's important, really, what you're suggesting there in lots of the tips that you're giving, is that there's no should or shouldn't in it. There's no you should be doing this or you should be doing that. It's more of a you can make it look however you need it to look for you.
Yeah.
It will cost as much or as little as what works for you. The only criteria is that you're doing something that you look forward to. And it can be something, as you say, as simple as having a long bath. It could be something as simple as sitting down and doing some knitting. I'm like, right now, I'm just gonna share what I really enjoy doing at the moment. In the evenings, I listen to Audible, like spirituality books, and do cross stitch whilst listening to them, and I love it. It's making me feel really nice.
And I need to start that as well, because Steph does that, and she makes massive blankets and all. Well, she does crochet, is it? No, that's the game with the ball, isn't it? No, that's croquet.
No, that is crochet.
Anyway,
yeah.
As you can tell, I'm not one of, I don't know a lot about it, but I want to start doing that as well. I love the idea of that. And we're multitaskers, aren't we? So that way you could be making something with your hands, listening to something. But it's true. And you also feel a sense of achievement. And that's a really big thing. And that's what I didn't get when I was drinking, because at the end of every day, what have I done? Well, I've spent 15 quid on alcohol. I'm drunk and I'm going to bed. And I've watched telly that, quite frankly, I could watch again tomorrow and I probably wouldn't remember half of it. I've watched films and not realized till the end that I've already seen it.
Yeah.
You know, it's such a waste. Sitting there drinking, watching telly is such a waste of precious life. You're never going to look back as an old person and go, you know, oh, I wish I'd done more of that sitting at home and getting pissed on my own watching TV. Are you? You're going to go, what a waste of when I could have been up and learning things, talking to people, doing stuff. I've just wasted it away. And yeah, it's it depresses me thinking of how much time I have. But you can't keep sitting there looking back and going, oh, I shouldn't have done that. You've got to look at now and what you've got in the future. But
Absolutely. Something that's coming up for me actually, as you're saying that, Kate, which I'm sure a lot of people will resonate with, because I know more and more people are reporting on Instagram and TikTok that they have at least symptoms of ADHD, which is just a symptom of an overstimulated society that we live in. So most of us are on the spectrum somewhere with having some symptoms of it because we're just overstimulated. And I definitely have some symptoms of it. I haven't been diagnosed. I don't think I've necessarily got ADHD, but I definitely experience some symptoms, as many people do. And one of the things that I've always found is that I get bored watching television because it's not quite enough. So I'll need to do something else whilst watching the TV. And I think that drove a lot of my drinking, right? Because what I was actually saying is, this is not stimulating me, so I'm now going to anesthetize myself to a level where this is enough for me. Whereas now I realize that it's more relaxing for me to do cross stitch, so I'm doing something with my hands and listen to something. I can concentrate on them both really nicely at the same time, and I feel more stimulated. So that's a tip actually that I think it clearly works for you too, that people might want to explore this idea of doing something with our hands whilst absorbing audio content. We've both got podcasts, guys, that you can go do while you're doing this, or walking and listening to something. But certainly movement and concentration at the same time for me seem to be like really, really supportive.
I mean, exercise is a big one, isn't it? And it's that thing of what, when you do exercise, which I didn't when you were a drinker, you would do it to try and compensate for the drink. That doesn't work. It's like trying to pick up sugar with a fork. You're going to fall short every single time because you are taking drugs and you're trying to do exercise, and even eating healthily and vitamin supplements. Alcohol's poison. You don't digest the supplements properly. And I've learned about this recently. If you're drinking, they literally go through you. Your body doesn't absorb a lot of these things. And it's constantly trying to balance. It's like, well, actually, when you stop, you can exercise and the results you see are really so much more drastic because you're taking all of that bad stuff out. And also you're trying to fill your time. You've got so much more energy. You're sleeping better. You're physically in a much better place and you see the results. And I think a lot of people turn to exercise when they stop because it does fill the time, and you can do that at home. There are loads of things, whether it's yoga or, proper cardiovascular exercise, all those things. There are free stuff online that you can do. So I think that's a good one. It's not for me. Exercise like that is not for me. I'm a swimmer and a walker. Those are the two things that I do pretty much. But I think those kind of things also are quite exciting to discover, because even if you did them a bit before, you get better. I mean, I've gotten better at my job. I'm a more interesting person. I'm more interested in people. I'm a much better all-round person. I'm better at everything I do now that I'm sober. My memory, which I was really worried about, I thought it's gone. My memory is awful, and that has really come back.
Oh, wow.
And I remember things. I mean, I was really nervous about that when I stopped because it was awful. And I'm not just talking about the fact I couldn't remember what I'd said because I was drunk. My short-term memory was crap. Like I couldn't remember I couldn't remember a boyfriend's surname, and I lived with him for a year, and I was like, what was his name? I mean, what's that? That's not good, is it? But I think things just change, and in a way boredom is something to really embrace, because it's just time when you're not doing anything, and you have to sit in that quiet time when you're on your own to really listen to yourself and say, what do I feel like? Do I feel like eating chocolate? Do I feel like talking to someone? Do I feel like reading something? Do I feel like going for a walk? And that's how you learn who you are without alcohol. And without that time and that downtime and that peace, you're not going to work it out.
Actually, something that you've just made me think of as you're saying that is, we live in a very yang society. So that's the very masculine energy of go, 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 get stuff done, let's be productive. And I think a lot of us have used alcohol to kind of try and balance out the stress of being in our yang all the time. And of course, that's out of balance. We want yin and yang. And when we stop drinking, something that, I mean, I've definitely done this gradually over time. I've learned how to be more yin. I've learned how to sit. And actually now I don't have a TV. I sit in the evening sometimes and I'm like, oh, I could look at TikTok. I could read my book, could listen to that podcast. And I'm like, you know what? I just want to sit quietly for like half an hour and just think about stuff. And I'll sit on my sofa, I kid you not, with no sound on. And I'll just be basically having conversation in my head, like, how am I feeling? Like, what's happened today? What? And kind of like journaling in my head, but just letting myself think. You know how when you're on the train and you look out the window and you just think about life?
Yeah.
I do that
I
quite a
love
lot.
that. I
It's
love
so
that idea.
And you know what? It's so healing. When I do that, things come up for me that I'm like, oh, hang on a minute. Yes, I need to look at this, or that makes sense now, or things just come up from my subconscious. It's kind of like a meditation, but it's not, it's just sitting quietly. And it's
I've
such
got a question for you then in that case. Sorry to interrupt you, but so I was in London once with my sister, and we were walking down the street. Well, we're both from London, so I wasn't just there on a trip, we were just there. And it was busy, it was packed. I can't remember exactly where we were, but it was in the city somewhere. And she just went, look, just give me an hour. I'm just going to go down here and do a bit of meditation. And I kind of looked down this tiny alleyway and she went, oh, there's a little Buddhist center in there. And I went, okay. And I went to the pub and met her back. And she's like, that was just amazing. There's just this beautiful tree. And I just thought, how have you found? I was so jealous. It's like, how have you found this little bubble of tranquility in the middle of this hustle and bustle? But she did, and she came out like a completely different person. So my question is, she managed to do this in the middle with everything going on around her, which for me was like, I would never be able to do that. But you see what you've just said, can you do that wherever you are? Like if I suddenly wanted to just go, I want to take stock, could I do that if I was on a working in an office, or I lived in a really busy city, or I was on a train? Do you think it's possible, and how would you do it, to be able to just sit and reflect like that? Because I have no idea how I would do that.
Okay, so first of all, I know our brain is not a muscle, but the way that our neural pathways work are kind of like muscles, because the more we use them, the thicker they get. So like a muscle gets stronger. So it's definitely something that you can practice. Secondly, there's a difference between Buddhist meditation and I mean, there's also different types of meditation, but what I would describe me doing is I'm not trying to quieten my thoughts. I'm very much talking to myself. Like it's like we've all got different parts of us, right? But I'm connecting in with what I call my higher self, and I'm saying like, well, like how are we? Like what's going on? What do I need to think about? How can I reframe what's going on? Like how can I make sense of where I need to go, etc. And really listening to myself. And something that I have realized that I really like doing is if I'm in chaos or if I'm in a situation that I don't want to be in. Like say sometimes for example, if I was doing supply and I was invigilating an exam, so I can't do anything other than sit there and watch the students, which is really boring. That's when I'll be like, oh, okay, I'm going to do some really serious inward reflection. And while I'm walking around this room invigilating, and I'll start to connect in with myself, and I'll get loads of downloads, and I'll start getting clarity on things. Just in the way that if you're having a chat with a friend, I just do it with myself in my head and like ask myself questions and kind of channel things. So it's definitely something that you can lean into. I think having a still mind is a harder discipline when you're amongst chaos, other than what I do, which is very much, it's just I go into like I'm my own best friend mode, and like no one knows that I'm talking to you, but this is, I can do what I want. No one can control my mind. So if I don't want to be in this environment, I'm actually somewhere else having a nice chat and thinking about things I want to think about that make me feel better, if that makes sense.
So it's a bit like journaling, but without the journal.
Yeah.
So you can kind of just go sit on a bench and just sit there. I mean, I don't think I'd feel comfortable sitting closing my eyes, but I really want to start doing what you've just explained, because I think it's really important to just stop and take stock of what's happening, because the world won't fall apart if you're not answering messages for half an hour. The world won't fall apart if you turn your phone off every evening at 9 o'clock, and you say, right, that's it, I'm going to have 1 hour before bed. And I think those are the kind of things that you start to learn in early sobriety, that you do not have that kind of capacity for organization. And it's things like this, kind of just zone out a little bit. I really want to learn to do that, because my mind is always racing. And what you said about ADHD, you know, I was sent to a special school when I was a kid because I couldn't stay focused in the state school that my 3 siblings went to. I was like, I just can't concentrate. I just look out of the window and I start daydreaming. And I'm not doing it to be rude. It's just when they start talking, I zone out and I start thinking about something else, you know. And so I was sent to this place, which was great because it was drama, and if you wanted to, you could go and sit on the field and do your work. You didn't have to stay in the classroom, very small classes, and it taught me that there are different paths. You don't have to learn in this one structured way. You can do it however you want. But the problem is that it's allowed me to go about my life with a constantly busy mind. And that's, again, one of the reasons I drank, was to quieten my mind, because it was exhausting. Whereas now I've kind of learned to do that through walking and exercise and stuff like that. It's almost like I want that boredom. I want that peace.
Okay,
Why
so
do
I resonate with what you're saying. And something that has been a big reframe for me, and I didn't plan this, it's just happened naturally over the last 6 months, is I've reframed what getting things done looks like. So I'm a pragmatist, and I've always really liked having lists and feeling really efficient. But now I see healing as so paramount to my life being successful in every way, that I see any kind of healing work I'm doing is a seriously important job well done. So, for example, if I wake up in the morning or something happens like in the morning that makes me feel really emotional, not very nice, and then I spend all afternoon, let's say I've not got any clients and I've got like 3-4 hours gap, I might get into bed and like put myself into a relaxed state and be like, I just need to process because I'm not feeling very nice. So I'm going to lie here and commit to processing these feelings. So I'll let myself lie there and feel them. I might do some Reiki on myself, but I'll let myself fully feel them and release them. And I'll sit there quietly and let myself kind of journal in my mind. And I would say that when I journal in my mind, I've got to the point now where I feel like when I'm writing, it slows me down. Like I can think much more quickly and clearly when I'm just sitting there and connecting with myself. And I might make the odd note in my phone if I'm like, oh, that's really important. But sometimes I do that. And then by the end of the day, I'm like, oh, I've had a massive breakthrough. Oh my God. Or I might be in the middle of it and I'm like, I need to do an inner child meditation because I've just realized that it's this old memory that's making me feel like this. And the old me wouldn't have let myself do that. I'd have been like, I haven't got time for this. I need to get stuff done. And then I would have numbed in the evening because my brain would have felt busy. But actually now my brain feels busy. I'm like, oh, I need to process something. This is more important than anything because it's going to affect every other thing in my life until I've dealt with it. So let's do that first and then I'll do the other stuff. Yeah, that's kind of how I do it.
And it's, everyone drinks for a reason. There isn't anyone who drinks alcohol regularly and to excess who isn't drinking for a reason. That reason might be because you feel awkward in social situations. It might be because you are bored. It might be because you're addicted to it and you're making up excuses, but there's a reason that you're picking up that glass, because it's expensive and it's damaging. We knew that when we were drinking to some extent. I didn't know how damaging, and you can convince yourself. But I think when you stop spending time trying to get to the crux of why you were drinking is a really important thing, because it takes a long time to do that. But if you can start to think about it from the very early days, it almost helps to stay away from it, because you think, I want to tackle this. I want to get rid of this because I'm not going to give it the power that it's, because look, it's damaging me. It's damaging my relationships. It's damaging how I feel as a mother, taking time away from my kids. I'm not reading them another story because I want to get down here and have my wine. It's, this thing is taking. And I'm the one with the power here. I'm the one who's buying it and opening it. So why am I doing that? Because if I can work that out and sort that out in my head, I won't do it anymore. And I think that's what boredom often relates to, and that's scary as well. People don't want to deal with that early on, and sometimes never, and sometimes it takes a long time. But I think people keep busy, so they don't, I think there's something to that. They don't have to deal with that stuff. So I think sometimes boredom is almost seen as a stay away, keep yourself active, because if you're quiet and your brain starts ticking over and there's no alcohol to numb that pain, you're going to have to deal with some big emotions. And that can be scary.
Yeah, it kind of floats to the surface. And I think this happened for all of us in some way or some shape or form during lockdown. Because I describe it like, you know, think of a bottle with like loads of different densities of liquids in, and you shake it up and it's all one color, and then you put the bottle down on the table and all the liquids separate and all the shit floats to the top. And that's kind of what happens.
You see it for what it is. Instead of one big mess, you can identify the different.
Exactly. And I think that happened for a lot of people during lockdown, because a lot of people changed things in their lives, me being one of them, because we had that time to think for it all to float to the surface. And that is what happens when we stop drinking. And, you know, it's okay to not want to deal with everything all at once. Of course it is. We don't have to bulldoze through our healing, but we do. Things come up and we have a choice. We can push them back down with alcohol and carry them around with us forevermore, or we can think, okay, I get to get rid of this now. I need to feel it to heal it. I'm going to have to process this. I'm going to have to go through those emotions. It's not going to be pretty, but at least I get to then release it and move through it. And it is that reframing. I get to do this for myself.
I agree. Completely. And I think things like coloring books, I know that sounds so simple, but you can get those beautiful coloring books now, you know, for the price of a bottle of wine. You can buy a beautiful book from the bookshop, a really lovely new set of pencils, and you can sit there and you can just start to do something and let your mind work while you're doing it. So you're not just sitting there scaring yourself to death because you're having to deal with all these things you've been pushing down. Or I don't think I have loads of like trauma in my past. I think I've drunk for lots of reasons, but they're bits and bobs. It's not like I've got to face one big demon. But actually, by doing something like that, it fills the time. I can see something that I'm creating. I'm changing something in my life by creating, you know, a picture or a painting, and I'm doing painting now. And by doing that, you can say, I'm being proactive, but your mind works because you don't need to use your mind to color in a picture. I think things like that are really helpful. And I think people should be prepared when they stop drinking to have stuff, to invest in some things that they can do at home in the evenings, and some drinks if that's their thing, alcohol-free drinks. I think that's really important, so that you've got something to look forward to when that time hits, that witching hour, when you would usually pick up a drink.
Yeah, absolutely. Having a plan, something soothing, something peaceful, something creative. Creativity can be so powerful when you get to that point in the evening. And just reframing whenever something comes up that feels really icky, kind of just, I always think, right, I'm rolling my sleeves up. All right, universe, nice one. My next assignment has arrived. Let's bring it on. What do tests mean? They just mean manifestations are coming through. You just got to show up for them, get it done, and there's always a reward on the other side. And that's, of course, what I help clients do all the time.
I mean, the journey is not, it's boring if it's just a plain flat road with nothing on either side. Who wants to go on that trip? You know, it's meant to be weaving.
You know?
It's meant to be weaving, and it's meant to be tricky at some points, because by overcoming stuff, you feel proud and you learn.
Actually, I want to add an analogy here, which links to what you're saying, which I find super helpful. So when we're thinking about manifestation, we really want to step into our power and start harnessing the life that we want. We need to think of our life as a film, and our life is basically a film, because when we look at how we process reality, it's impossible to process the actual sensory experience going on around you. We haven't got the computing capacity in our brain. So we are creating an edited version through our reticular activating system. and we are just picking the relevant parts. So the world that I live in, Kate, is completely different to the world that you live in, but we obviously, because we're friends, there are enough similarities that we can understand each other. But that's really what we mean when we say we're on the same wavelength as someone. We've got enough similarities in our video editing. But when we think about it like that, you really are the main character of your own movie. And as you say, no one wants to watch a movie where nothing happens. So we need to see the things, the uncomfortable experiences in life, as just interesting plot twists.
Yeah.
But also, no movie, or not many movies, end where it's not happily ever after, and it's not like, oh my God, that's amazing, and everything's been concluded. And, you know, those plot twists were so important for the narrative to continue. And if that hadn't happened, then they wouldn't have had this romantic moment at the end, etc. So whenever things go wrong, just think, okay, plot twist. Well, this is just making the story juicy and exciting, because when it all comes good, it's going to be so much more beautiful and amazing because of this plot twist, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really nice way to look at it, and it's a really good way to digest the things that happen to you that aren't very nice to deal with, because let's face it, we all have those, and they come, there's stuff every month that you have to deal with that makes you feel uncomfortable. But that's another thing that I call it boredom, but it's also time, isn't it? It's time where you've got nothing to do. That's what we class as boredom. You've got a space to fill that you can quantify with a number of minutes, and you've got nothing to do in it. So that's what is boredom, isn't it? But actually, you know, once you start to think about how I can fill it up, what I can do, and process on how you're going to deal with tricky situations. Because I was like, quick fire, this happens, that's what I'm going to respond, and then it's over. And actually now I wait and I think and I give it days and I come back to things, I contemplate, and sometimes I get so bored, I'm like, I can't be asked to even take this any further. I would never have done that when I was drinking, ever. And now it's really nice because I'm sure of my convictions, of my decisions, because I've given them time to process. And that might sound stupid, but going out for 1 hour walk and deciding that you're not going to create a whole lot of shit between yourself and someone else because of something that is none of your business anyway and you don't care about, can save you so much upset and drama in the future. You don't have to be involved in it. And once you start loving yourself again and you start respecting yourself, you say, no, that's okay. That's my decision. It's that old boundary thing. But only when you've got time to think about things without a hangover, without being drunk and emotionally off the scale, you know, like think back at some of the decisions we made when we were drunk. It's just a mess. And it's like, I would never do that sober. But when you're always sober, life starts to make more sense. You become more predictable and you start to trust yourself. You're so much more reliable. And people know where they stand, and your boundaries are taken seriously because you don't change them every 5 seconds. And I think spending your free time thinking about things that are making you uncomfortable, even if it's someone stealing your sandwich at work and they've done it twice in a month and it's really winding you up, think about it and how much effort you want to put into that. Just whack some chili in the next one and leave it there and let them, you know, whatever you decide to do. But actually using that time to do what I think we're both saying the same thing, turn it from boredom into a productive like something that you can actually use to your advantage, or learning a musical instrument or something. And I'm making it sound easier than it is, I think, because
I think to kind of recap, like we can distract ourselves sometimes when we feel bored. We can also self-soothe, which is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And being creative is a really great way of filling those gaps in. But as you go further down this path, and you might not want to do it straight away, like when I first started down my sober path, it was very much distract myself with creative things or exercise. But you'll get to a point where you feel regulated and safe enough to start to lean into like what I call like healing spaces, and start to really enjoy sitting with your thoughts and feelings and letting things bubble up and starting to really, really heal yourself. And that is like, it's the oxymoron. You're getting so much done, but you're not doing anything. And you're leaning into that time so you can be energetically productive or productive with your healing. And that's, I think, where the real magic starts to happen.
I agree. And I don't think we need to be busy all the time. We're just so not used to it that it takes some getting used to, and it takes adjustment, like so many things do in sobriety, but they're all good. The final chapter is a good one. You know, none of them have a bad conclusion. None of these things, your health, your mind, your time, it just takes time to change, because it is a big change in life, and it's something you do have to adapt to. But that's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so worth adapting to. Oh, thank you so much for coming on, Kate. Can you remind anyone listening who wants to follow you or check out your podcast where they can find those?
I am Walking the Straight Line on Instagram, and that's the only social media I've got. And the podcast that I do with Steph is called The Sober Effect, and it is available on all platforms that do podcasts. So thank you. And I'm sorry if I've mumbled. I can't believe we've been speaking for as long as we have. My God, I'm not sure even what I've said, but it's been lovely talking to you.
I love talking to you. I'm sure, well, I hope everyone's enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. You haven't mumbled at all. We always have such great chats, and I like listening to long podcasts. So if people don't want to do that, then that's fine. But you can always pause and come back to them. So no, that's great. Thank you so much, Kate, and I'll see you soon, I'm sure.
See you soon. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you so much for listening to me today. If you would like to have the chance of winning a free one-to-one coaching session with me, then I'd love it if you could leave me a 5-star review. All you need to do is take a screenshot of the review and send it to me at thrive@coachingbyanneka.co.uk, and I would love to connect with you. If you would like to connect with me further and you'd like to download my free guide, then please go to my website and you can do that, and you'll be added to my mail list. Or if you would just like to book in a free discovery call with me, then you can do so via my email address or through my website. All of these links will be in the show notes. And I hope you have a wonderful, magical, sober week, and I will see you this time next week.